Before I present or commence the discussion on this historic legislation, I wish to express my condolences to the family of the late Speaker, Speaker Donald Alsey, who presided over this House, and I wish to express my condolences to his family on his death. I also, Mr. Speaker, wish to apologize to the members of the public who suffered some inconvenience from the delay in getting their new e-passports. Anytime there is change, Mr. Speaker, there is always some level of dislocation, and I want to assure them that all those who paid $80 for their passport before the 25th of July, they will not be asked to pay anything more than the $80 that they paid previously. And also, Mr. Speaker, the passport that they have presently can still be used for travel and can still be used for other purposes. So if there is not an urgent need to travel, there is no need to want to change your passport now if there is not an urgent need, or if your passport has not expired. If your passport has not expired, you can still use your old passport to travel. So there is no need to be on the lines if your passport has not expired. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Minister and the staff and the people in immigration for making that transition to e-passports, it's at the top edge of the passport business, and we hope that everything works as is customary, Mr. Speaker. So having said so, I am very pleased that St. Lucians have access to the e-passport. Mr. Speaker, in the election of 2021, the government that the people of St. Lucia chose, on its platform, there was a lot of talk about good governance. And I want to quote from page 51 of our manifesto, Mr. Speaker. And I want to quote, during my budget address, also in our manifesto, but I want to quote today from the budget address, which is already a document of this House. Mr. Speaker, on page 51, in the run-up to the last general elections, my party committed to ushering in a new era of good governance with zero tolerance for corruption in the administration of public affairs. Mr. Speaker, quite apart from our core beliefs, our policy position was in response to an outcry for justice from the people of St. Lucia for the abuses which were being committed by the last UWP administration. Mr. Speaker, St. Lucia had witnessed a massive decline in its corruption index global rating. Therefore, we promised to stop the slide and restore our country's reputation to good international standings. Mr. Speaker, good governance protects the citizens of a country from abusive administrations who use state resources for the benefit of a few at the expense of the majority. It assures that the government is accountable, transparent, equitable, and inclusive, and law-abiding. We cannot allow corruption to take deep root in the administration of government affairs and its statutory agencies. We know that corruption breeds inefficiency, illegal appropriation of wealth, wastage of resources, and disregards the interests and needs of the most vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, with this in light, we stated we are at the advanced stage of preparation for enacting the relevant legislation to appoint a special prosecutor to conduct investigations into acts of alleged public corruption. And Mr. Speaker, this is the act which I have the honor to present in this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, we are not reinventing the wheel here. There have been several acts of that nature in the region. The Special Prosecutor Bill in St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, is based on the Jamaican Corruption Prevention and Special Prosecutor Acts. The Jamaica Act promotes and strengthens measures to prevent and combat corrupt conduct more efficiently and effectively, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, that act was challenged in relation to the Director of Public Prosecutions, and it was not successful, Mr. Speaker. The Special Prosecutor, also, there's a Special Prosecutor in British Columbia. It's called the Crown Counsel Act. In Ghana, passed in 2017, in the United States of America, and in Australia, Mr. Speaker. So we are not reinventing the wheel here, nor are we doing anything special to go on any witch hunt, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this act is not about a witch hunt. This act is about having St. Lucia as a place where corruption is not tolerated or encouraged, whether for politicians or for public officials. This is the object of the act, Mr. Speaker. The act doesn't any way conflict with the duties of the Office of the Director of Prosecutions. But Mr. Speaker, we know, and the Director of Prosecutions said himself that he's overwhelmed. He said that there are over 90 cases of murder in the system which he cannot deal with, Mr. Speaker. So if we cannot wait, Mr. Speaker, we cannot wait for the Director of Public Prosecutions whilst the very core of our existence is being threatened, Mr. Speaker, by acts or perceived acts of corruption, Mr. Speaker. And I turn to Section 8, the powers of the Special Prosecutor. It says, subject to the powers of the Director of Public Prosecutions under Section 73 of the Constitution of St. Lucia. The Special Prosecutor may perform any function in relation to the institution carrying on and withdrawal of a prosecution for an offense against the laws of St. Lucia, or may prosecute a matter in his or her name. And under Section 8.3, Mr. Speaker, it says, the Special Prosecutor shall not withdraw a matter instituted or referred to him or her by the Director of Public Prosecutions unless the Director of Public Prosecutions consents in writing. So what it says, Mr. Speaker, if the Director of Public Prosecutions begins a matter, the Special Prosecutor cannot interfere. So the fear that the powers of the Director of Public Prosecution are being diminished or belittled is clearly shown, Mr. Speaker. That is not the case as it is shown in the law, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, but we believe, it's our fundamental belief, Mr. Speaker, that public officials, and I want to tell you, Mr. Speaker, what is a public official as is in the Act. A public official includes a member of Parliament or a person having official duties under an enactment or a former public official, Mr. Speaker. So that means, Mr. Speaker, even if you are a member of Parliament at the time and you are no longer a member of Parliament and it's found that there is need for an investigation, Mr. Speaker, being a former member of Parliament will not protect you. So former public officials, that includes member of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, are still under the jurisdiction of the Special Prosecutor if necessary, Mr. Speaker. And the point of emphasis is if necessary. You see, Mr. Speaker, this government, we want to usher a new level of governance in this country. There have been too many accusations that have gone on that have not been investigated. This is not a witch hunt, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you can't have a situation where government spends millions of dollars, Mr. Speaker, millions of dollars, and the people involved are not called to account for the use of that money. It's not legislation for us or for them. It's legislation to uplift the level of governance in this country. It is legislation that will make St. Lucia stand out as a country where there is zero tolerance towards corruption. And that is the mantra under which we campaigned, Mr. Speaker. There have been too many instances, Mr. Speaker, where public officials have disregarded statements by technocrats. Statements like the cost of desilting a river was unconscionable. And there has been absolutely no discussion on that, Mr. Speaker. There are too many times where in this country, jobs that were valued at $650,000 end up costing $3 million, Mr. Speaker, for the same job. And the public officials had the guts, to use a local word, to say this is unconscionable, and nothing was done, Mr. Speaker. That cannot happen. That should not happen, Mr. Speaker. And all we are saying is that if it is found, and I want to make it clear, this is not a situation where we are going after anyone, because this bill also pertains to us in this honorable house. It pertains to us. What we want to do is to ensure that the taxpayers of this country, that their money is adequately spent and not spent on enriching or making other people's pockets, Mr. Speaker, either for themselves, their friends, or their family, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to I've made it clear that the special prosecutor does not affect the director of public prosecutions. I want to, Mr. Speaker, to bring your attention to part 1 of the bill, Mr. Speaker, of the Act, the Special Prosecutor. And it says, the Judicial and Legal Services Commission shall, in consultation with the Attorney General, appoint an attorney at law to be a special prosecutor. So that person is not a political appointee. He's appointed by the Judicial and Legal Services Commission. And Section 4.2, Mr. Speaker, speaks to the attorney at law appointed under subsection 1 shall have at least 10 years experience in the practice of law. 10 years experience. To be a judge, Mr. Speaker, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you need 7 years experience. But in that case, to ensure that the official is of high repute and highly experienced, the law says that he must have at least 10 years in experience in the practice of the law, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Act speaks to how the special prosecutor can be disqualified if he has filed for bankruptcy, or if he is declared by a court to be a bankrupt, if he is unable to discharge the functions of his or her office, whether arising from infirmity of body or mind or any other cause, if is found to have committed professional misconduct under Section 45 of the Legal Professions Act and is removed from the role under Section 29, is convicted of a criminal offense, except if the offense is a minor traffic offense, or is spent in accordance with the criminal records, or is a member of parliament. So a member of parliament cannot be a special prosecutor, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Act outlines the functions of the special prosecutor. The functions of the special prosecutor are to receive a complaint of corrupt conduct from any person and investigate the corrupt conduct. To investigate corrupt conduct on his or her own motion. To institute a criminal prosecution or civil claim, criminal or civil. So that means he can ask for you to go to jail, or he can ask for you to pay back, criminal or civil. In any court against a public officer or public official, if the conduct of the public officer or public official appears to the special prosecutor on reasonable grounds to involve corrupt conduct. To prosecute a criminal offense or civil claim instituted by him or her in the courts. To prosecute a criminal offense for corrupt conduct referred to him or her by a director of public prosecutions. That means the director of public prosecutions can ask the special prosecutor to prosecute a criminal offense if in case he or she doesn't have the time, Mr. Speaker. And to pursue, coordinate, and supervise civil recovery. The special prosecutor may investigate and prosecute a public officer or public official for a criminal offense or prosecute a civil claim for corrupt conduct committed by a public officer or public official in the course of his or her public office or public duties under an enactment, and for this purpose the special prosecutor is deemed to have the authority to investigate, institute, carry on, or do any other thing and then exercise any other function under this enactment, Mr. Speaker. And to do that, the special prosecutor will have a staff, and the staff could consist of attorney at laws, investigators, administrative and other ancillary staff required for the efficient discharge of the function of the special prosecutor. And the staff of the special prosecutor are public officers. It's important to note that, Mr. Speaker. They are public officers, the staff of the special prosecutor, Mr. Speaker. And the special prosecutor, if you look at section 19, it says, prior to commencement of duties, the special prosecutor, acting special prosecutor, attorneys at law, investigators, administrative and auxiliary staff shall take the prescribed oath or affirmations of appointment and secrecy. And secrecy, Mr. Speaker. Oh, Mr. Speaker, the Act speaks to the powers of the special prosecutor, and I've outlined before, subject to the powers of the Director of Public Prosecutions on the substance Section 73 of the Constitution of St. Lucia, the special prosecutor may perform any function in relation to the institution, carried on and withdrawal of a prosecution for an offense against the laws of St. Lucia, and may prosecute a matter in his or her name, subject to the powers of the Director of Public Prosecution. Where the special prosecutor institutes a prosecution against a person, the special prosecutor may withdraw the matter and the court shall discharge the defendant. The special prosecutor shall not withdraw a matter instituted or referred to him by him or her by the Director of Public Prosecutions unless the Director of Public Prosecutions consents in writing. And I'm repeating that, Mr. Speaker, because there are those who may want to create the usual mischief by trying to relate the Director of Public Prosecutions to the Special Prosecutor, Mr. Speaker. There are two distinct positions, but if the Director of Public Prosecutions institutes a criminal or civil action, the Special Prosecutor cannot stop it. Cannot stop it. So the Director of Public Prosecutions, his independence remains pristine. He cannot stop it unless the Director of Public Prosecutions consents in writing. There's absolutely no conflict between the roles of the Director of Public Prosecutions and the Special Prosecutor. Absolutely no conflict, Mr. Speaker. The Special Prosecutor may, with the approval of the Attorney General, engage on the agreements in writing persons having suitable qualifications and experience as consultants to perform service for Special Prosecutor. And Mr. Speaker, there is nothing new in that, Mr. Speaker. You've heard about these exorbitant legal fees that have been charged. And Mr. Speaker, there are more legal fees that are being considered. There are legal fees that are being considered, Mr. Speaker, and I hope that this Honorable House, those who have the information, will tell the people of this country why were these legal fees so exorbitant and who promised to pay what to who and how much. Mr. Speaker, the special prosecutor is deemed to have the powers of the Director of Public Prosecution under enactment, except for the powers exclusively given to the Director of Public Prosecutions under the Constitution of St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Act speaks to the duration of the appointment. The special prosecutor holds office for a period not exceeding 5 years and is specified in the instrument of his or her appointment. The special prosecutor may resign his or her office by written notice to the Judicial and Legal Services Commission, Mr. Speaker. There is provision for the appointment of an acting special prosecutor, Mr. Speaker. The Act speaks in section 13 to the removal of the special prosecutor. And it says, the special prosecutor may be removed from office for inability to exercise the functions of his or her office without arising from infirmity of body or mind or another cause or for misbehavior, Mr. Speaker. The special prosecutor shall be removed from office if the question of his or her removal from the office under the subsection 1 is referred to the Judicial and Legal Services Commission by the Attorney General for investigation and determination, and if subsequent to the investigation, the Judicial and Legal Service Commission recommends to the Permanent Secretary and Minister responsible for the public service that the special prosecutor must be removed, Mr. Speaker. So there's a whole series of processes, Mr. Speaker, in which you can remove the special prosecutor. A whole series of processes, Mr. Speaker. Well, the question of removing the special prosecutor has been referred to the Judicial and Legal Services Commission under this section, and the Judicial and Legal Services Commission advises the Permanent Secretary and the Ministry responsible for the public service to suspend the special prosecutor from the exercise of his or her functions. Pending the outcome of the investigation, the special prosecutor shall be suspended. Mr. Speaker, it is not a willy-nilly situation. A situation where there are clear procedures, Mr. Speaker, because this is very serious legislation, Mr. Speaker. I've spoken about the staff of the Special Prosecutor Office as in Section 15, Mr. Speaker. Then we've spoken about, Mr. Speaker, the appointment of investigators, administrative and ancillary staff, Mr. Speaker. You see, Mr. Speaker, the Special Prosecutor will have attorneys at law working in his office, Mr. Speaker. That is to ensure that there is balance and also to ensure that the fees that are charged are in line with usual normal practice. But what if the staff are in the office, Mr. Speaker, then it's different, Mr. Speaker. And I want to also say that if the staff are on contract, they are public officers. If they are on contract, there will be specific terms and conditions, Mr. Speaker. But as is the case in the public service, Mr. Speaker, if they are public officers not on contract, their salary must be what is stipulated in the estimate of expenditure for that level of officer. That's right, Attorney General. That is clear, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we spoke about the oath of secrecy, Section 19, disclosure of interest. If this, again, Mr. Speaker, that is to avoid conflict of interest, to avoid internal internal manipulation, and insider trading, Mr. Speaker. Disclosure of interest. The special prosecutor, acting special prosecutor, attorneys at law and investigators shall immediately give written notice to the Attorney General of a direct or indirect interest adverse to his or her functions under this act. So you cannot be judge, jury, and executioner. So you cannot sit as special prosecutor and you have an interest in the activity that is taking place. Or your brother has an interest, or your father has an interest, or your sister has an interest, Mr. Speaker. You cannot sit as special prosecutor. There needs to be that division, Mr. Speaker, because when you decide that you want to go into public life, Mr. Speaker, you're actually making a sacrifice. And that sacrifice comes with obligations. You cannot expect to be in public life and want to be the same as someone in private life. You cannot have your cake and eat it. You must make the sacrifice that public life entails. You can't want to be in public life for power. You can't want to be in public life to victimize people. You can't want to be in public life to use your power and say, I did it because I could. You cannot want to be in public life and at the same time be in private life. You have to make your choices. And this act ensures that these choices are made. Public officials, parliamentarians must make the necessary sacrifice and exercise the necessary restraint and constraint when they are public officials. That is clear. So that means that if you entered politics, and let's say you had a minibus, and within that term of office, Mr. Speaker, you found yourself with what? A plane? No. And you found yourself within that term of office, you find yourself with a 4-story building with an elevator. And when you entered office, everybody can see what you entered office with. Use me as an example. Everyone see what I entered office with. I still live the same place. That's what I entered office with. Anybody can see. But if you enter, and after 4 years, before you were there, you had a minibus. And because you know how to use money, after 4 years, Mr. Speaker, you have these vivid signs of wealth. Somebody should ask you, where did you get that money from? We're not saying that you stole it. We're not saying that you got it through any legal means. All we are saying is that if you are public official, if you are parliamentarian, you must be able to account for where your wealth came from if you do not enter politics with it. That's all we are saying. That's all we are saying, Mr. Speaker. So what we are saying is that bill will ensure that if there is a complaint, if somebody says that this public official told me, and he can prove, to give me this contract and put on this contract something for me, put on this contract something for me, for my personal use, Mr. Speaker. This act says that if it is proven, that person, if it's proven, Mr. Speaker, under part 2, it says a public officer or public official shall not engage in corrupt conduct. A public officer or public official who contravenes subsection 1 commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of $300,000 or to imprisonment for a term of 5 years or to both. On conviction or indictment, to a fine of $1 million or to imprisonment for a term of 10 years or both, Mr. Speaker. Last week in this Honorable House, we increased the penalties for firearms and firearm offenses. This week in this honorable house, we are increasing the penalties for the offense of corruption against the state of St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, the act further, and that is very important, because we know about threats that have been made to public officers and have been made to civil servants and have been made to officials. I'm the boss. If you talk, you know what will happen to you. Keep quiet. I say do it, do it. Whether it's right or wrong, Mr. Speaker, this act makes provisions for how a complaint is taken to the special prosecutor, and it protects people making that complaint. Because, Mr. Speaker, we live in a society of fear, of concern. Mr. Speaker. Many things that happen that makes people afraid to talk. And many times people tell you, like, since I'm Prime Minister, people come to me and say, this thing happened, Prime Minister, but don't mention my name, Many times, don't mention my name, They are afraid, Mr. Speaker. This act protects them, Mr. Speaker. So, listen to how a complaint is brought to the special prosecutor. Mr. Speaker, I want to make it abundantly clear. This law is there for us too, you know. It's not there for any one set of public officials. It is there for us in this honorable house. And every day I speak to my colleagues, these laws are there for us also. The same way when the last government increased the statute of limitations, what it was? Yes, they increased it to indefinite because they were looking to find something. They were directed at some people. They were looking to find something on somebody. So they increased it. We never shouted. We did not say a word. We sat in this honorable house and we kept quiet and we said, I think the member for Beaufort South said, pass your law, pass your law. They came and they extended the statute of limitations to say that if you committed offense in 1 year, some of them said after 7 years it could have been wiped out. They increased it. They said indefinitely. So if you do it in year 1 and they catch you in year 40, you're in trouble. We said nothing. We never complained. We never. The record will show. The opposition at the time never complained. We said, même bâton qui bat chien noir, qui bat chien blanc. So we said nothing, Mr. Speaker. We said nothing. And I've challenged them. I've sat in this honorable house, in this side, and I've said to them, if any of you have anything against me, bring it up. So there's no need for them to be screaming at the special prosecutor. Why are people screaming at the fact that we are keeping an election promise and put an act in Parliament that affects us also? Why is there such a hue and cry? Why before the bill comes into being, you want to ask me to investigate what? Your time will come. Bring a complaint and ask the president, we have to investigate, Mr. Speaker. Why the problems? Why the problems? Section 25, complaint to the special prosecutor. A person who has reasonable grounds to believe that a public official or public official is in breach of this act, has committed an act of corruption, will make a complaint in writing. It says the process now. You don't make it on Facebook, you make it in writing. Under subsection 1, the particulars of the breach or act of corruption, the particulars as far as known of the public officer or public official against whom the complaint is made. So if you're saying that somebody has a house in Canada or in Miami and you don't know how they got it, you need to be able to prove that on Avenue 1-2 there's a house which belongs to a particular person, and how did the person get the money to buy it. You need to be to have it with proof. So when you write this report, he will determine, Mr. Speaker, The particulars as far as known of the public officer or public official against whom the complaint is made and other prescribed particulars. It goes on to section 6, protection of persons making complaints. When a person makes a complaint to the special prosecutor under section 25 in good faith and reasonably believing that the complaint made and any allegations contained in it are substantially true, and in the circumstances it is reasonable for him or her to make the complaint, he or she is not liable to any form of reprisal or any suit, whether civil or criminal. A person shall not in the course of employment take reprisal against a person who makes a complaint under subsection 1. So if somebody makes a complaint under a particular government and this government changes the act, says you cannot take reprisals against that person. A person who contravenes subsection 2 commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of $300,000 or to imprisonment for a term of 5 years or to both, on conviction or indictment, to a fine of $1 million or to imprisonment for a term of 10 years or both. Under section 27, Mr. Speaker, it speaks to the rejection of a complaint by the special prosecutor. The special prosecutor may, on receipt of a complaint under section 25, and after examining the complaint, reject the complaint if the special prosecutor is of opinion that the complaint is frivolous, does not pertain to a matter the special prosecutor is empowered to deal with under this act. What it says, Mr. Speaker, that if the complaint is frivolous, if somebody just, like, you know, what do you call it, chimé bon la place? If it's somebody just chimé parole bon la place, bon la oui. If it's a parole bon la oui, Mr. Speaker, the special prosecutor can dismiss it as frivolous and dismiss it. So everybody can't just say what they want. The special prosecutor can dismiss it, Mr. Speaker. It goes further, Mr. Speaker. Investigation of a breach. When the special prosecutor decides that there's been some need for investigation, where it's reason on section 28, where an examination of a complaint made under subsection 25 or otherwise, the special prosecutor is of the view that an investigation is necessary to ascertain whether public officer or public official has committed a breach of this act or other enactment, he or she shall investigate the matter. Under section 29, on the conclusion of investigation under section 28, and whether the special prosecutor is satisfied that the public officer or public official must be prosecuted for an offense under section 24 or make another or under other enactment, the special prosecutor shall institute and undertake proceedings against the public official or public official or public officer or public official, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, then on the schedule, Mr. Speaker, it determines what is called corrupt conduct. And that section is very important, Mr. Speaker. What is corrupt conduct? Corrupt conduct in relation to public officer, public official includes soliciting or accepting an undue advantage for himself or self or for another person. Performing or refraining from performing his or her public functions for the purpose of obtaining an undue advantage for himself or for another person. That is called omission, the sin of omission. If you decide that you're just not dealing with that because it will affect you or somebody close to you. Promising, offering, or giving to a person an undue advantage to perform or refrain from performing his or her official function. So if, Mr. Speaker, it can be proven that you promise a man you'll give him a contract to build an airport, and in return, you will give him something, Mr. Speaker, the public prosecutor can investigate it. Abusing his or her real or supposed influence to obtain an undue advantage for himself or herself or for another person. Abusing his or her real or supposed influence to obtain an undue advantage for himself or herself or for another person. Abusing his or her real or supposed influence. So if you use your power, Mr. Speaker, your influence to give an undue advantage to yourself or another person, Mr. Speaker, that is considered corrupt conduct. Misbehavior in public office, misfeasance in public office, fraudulently using or concealing property or another benefit. Fraudulently using or concealing property or another benefit, offering or granting directly or indirectly to another public officer or public official an article, money, or other benefit, being a gift, favor, promise, or advantage to the public officer, public official, or another person for doing an act of omitting to do an act in the performance of the other public officers or public officials' public function. In other words, bribery. Allowing his or her private interests to conflict with his or her public duties, or improperly influence his or her conduct in the performance of his or her public duties. Allowing his or her private interests to conflict with his or her public duties, or improperly influence his or her conduct in the performance of his or her public duties. Offering or granting directly or indirectly to a person performing a public function in a foreign state an article of money or other benefit, being a gift, favor, promise, or advantage in connection with an economic or commercial transaction for an act to be performed or omitted to be performed by that person in the performance of the person's public functions. Acquiring, directly or indirectly, property or resources disproportionate to his or her legitimate sources of income, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is extremely important and should be noted. Acquiring, directly or indirectly, property or resource disproportionate to his or her legitimate sources of income, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, this is very powerful legislation. It's a very powerful legislation, Mr. And I agree, it's powerful and serious, Mr. Speaker. And that is why there must be balance. There must be balance, Mr. Speaker. Public officials are called upon now to have the highest level of behavior. Their behavior now is under scrutiny, Mr. Speaker. All public and former public officials, Mr. Speaker. And it means, Mr. Speaker, that we may have to look at the way that they're compensated. Because right now, Mr. Speaker, we are saying that we have raised the bar in terms of behavior of public officials. We have really raised the bar, Mr. Speaker. And this legislation is revolutionary. It's taken a leap of faith in the conduct of our public officials. It is saying to us that this government will not tolerate any real or perceived level of corruption. And it's saying that anyone who has an idea or who believes that there is any corruption or an act of corruption, they have the right to report the person to a matured, experienced, apolitical special prosecutor who will look into it and decide what is right and what is wrong, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is clear. It is clear that we we want to be a shining example of good governance in the region. It's not a time for talk, Mr. Speaker. It's a time where we are putting our money where our mouth is. We spoke about corruption. We spoke about the elimination of corruption, Speaker. And now we are giving the public the means and the resources to investigate corruption. Anybody in the public can make a complaint once it's not frivolous and vexatious to the spirit. Anybody can make a complaint and it can be investigated, Mr. Speaker, and we should find whether it is right or whether it's wrong, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this means that in government we must embrace honesty, we must embrace accountability, and we must look as government as being a service to others, a service to people. You cannot be in government and your main aim is to victimize people or to get rich or to take advantage of people because of your position. You have to look at government as a form of service, a form of improving people's lives, a form of making people's quality of life better. This is why you're in government. We're not in government, we ought not to be in government to boost our egos. We ought not to be in government to settle scores. We ought to be in government to put people first. We ought to be in government to ensure that people's quality of life improves, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, speaking about that, Mr. Speaker, this St. Lucia really belongs to all of us. And yesterday, and it amazes me, Mr. Speaker, when I see what people tell the world about St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. Just because they want to score some level of political gain, Mr. Speaker. I come to the situation of crime, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, there was a post in social media of a 2004 on the opposition media. A 2004 posting. The 2004 was taken out. It was erased. And it appears that if the situation was happening now. Mr. Speaker, what gain? To use a phrase, ki gain, kiasa. But this time it's not for computers. I mean, why are you just because, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, just because
front foot, you want to be on the front foot.
Just
front foot. That is your style now.
Just because, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
Front foot.
The quality of political discourse in St. Lucia has deteriorated to such an extent, Mr. Speaker. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing, Mr. Speaker. It's amazing. But, Mr. Speaker, it's time for us to stop the talk, and it's time for us to walk the walk, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and for those who may say that the authority of certain positions is affected by this act, and as usual, we're playing politics and this and that, under Section 3, Mr. Speaker, it says, this act does not affect, I've said so before, I want to repeat it, the authority of the Director of Public Prosecutions under Section 73 of the Constitution of St. Lucia. The Attorney General, it does not affect the authority of the Attorney General to prosecute a civil claim or to discontinue or withdraw a civil claim on behalf of the government. It does not affect the integrity of the Parliamentary Commissioner under Section 112 of the Constitution of St. Lucia. It does not affect the Authority of Integrity Commission under Section 119 of the Constitution of St. Lucia, nor does it affect the integrity of the Financial Intelligence Authority under the Money Laundering Prevention Act. So it doesn't affect any of these authorities, Mr. Speaker. It doesn't affect any of these authorities, Mr. Speaker. It does not. And Mr. Speaker, speaking about misinformation and downright untruths, Mr. Speaker, again there was a post in social media saying that we're increasing VAT today.
Front foot.
Mr. Speaker, how is it possible for the government to come to Parliament today to increase VAT? Or last week it was I had increased VAT already. My position on VAT is clear, very clear, very clear. I want to say today and now in this honorable house that this government has not increased VAT. We have not increased VAT, and the VAT rate remains the same. I want to make it abundantly, and according to a friend of mine, pellucidly clear, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, this act is a quantum leap into good government, Mr. Speaker. St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, must become a beacon of hope in the region. A beacon of hope, where those who wish to invest in the country should not feel coerced by any official who demands bribes to secure facilitation of the intended investment, Mr. Speaker. And talking about investment, Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to tell you that the interest for investment in St. Lucia has increased, has improved, Mr. Speaker. You see for yourself. You can see for yourself, Mr. Speaker. If you drive by Halcyon, Sanders Halcyon, you see an extension going on to the hotel. I'm very pleased that extension going on. It's been built now. It's been built now, Mr. Speaker. And we signed the hotel for Choiseul. The member of for Choiseul is very happy, Mr. Speaker. He's very happy, Mr. Speaker. And no problem, Mr. Speaker. We're doing it now, Mr. Speaker. But the fact is, Mr. Speaker, it is happening now. That is what's important. It's not a promise. It's not a promise. It is not a promise of $1.2 billion of investment to happen in the next year. It is the reality that as we speak, is happening now. And that, Mr. Speaker, is the difference, Mr. Speaker. We do not, again, Mr. Speaker, we do not wish St. Lucia bad. And that is why this legislation affects all of us, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, there are people who make it their duty to not only wish, but to speculate and to predict bad for St. Lucia. Make it their duty, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased that my colleagues have agreed that those who put themselves up to serve the people of St. Lucia must do just that, to serve the people of St. Lucia and not themselves. Our politics in St. Lucia must not be seen as a path to get rich fast. It is morally wrong to sing so and to behave as if it was so, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, George Charles, our founder, our father, our hero, when he left politics, he was criticized for leaving politics poor. It is said that a politician ought not to leave politics poor, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we think that this is wrong. You should not get into politics to become rich, Mr. Speaker. You should not. No one sent to call you to get into politics. When you get into politics, Mr. Speaker, you must come understanding that it comes to sacrifice, Mr. Speaker. And this is what this legislation speaks to, Mr. Speaker. And Speaker, as Prime Minister, I intend to make my tenure in office a period where politicians begin to put people first, to be honest, to be accountable, and to be selfless, Mr. Speaker. That is how I want to be remembered, Mr. Speaker. I don't want to be remembered as a Prime Minister who gets involved in hostility and hatred and victimization and division and untruths and on peddling Mr. Speaker. That's not how I want to remember, Mr. Speaker. I want to remember as a Prime Minister who tried to improve the quality of life, not only the physical quality of life, Mr. Speaker, but the quality of life of our mentality, of our state of mind. I want to live in this country where St. Lucians feel proud of their country, Mr. Speaker. Where St. Lucians are proud to be St. Lucians. Where St. Lucians believe that colonialism was an evil. And that is why we celebrated Emancipation Day in August, Mr. Speaker. Where we are not afraid of our history. Where we believe we have to learn from the mistakes of the past and improve it in the present and make it better in the future, Mr. Speaker. When we leave government, we want to leave a better country. A country when people will not believe that these politicians are crooks. A country where people will not say, where no politician will ever say, when I commit crime on my own. And if any of my ministers ever make this statement, I say it publicly. If any of my ministers ever say in public, when they commit crime, they commit their own, I will fire them. You cannot tolerate that level of ill discipline in your cabinet, in a cabinet. No Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, no matter who the minister is. No Prime Minister should tolerate that level of largesse and say whatever you want and disrespect in Parliament of people, Mr. Speaker. No Prime Minister should, and this Prime Minister will not tolerate it, Mr. Speaker. This Prime Minister will tolerate a higher level of governance. A call to serve, not a call to be rich. A call to make a contribution to the people of the country, not a call to make a contribution to your friends, your family. And this is why this legislation is serious legislation. It's very serious legislation. And each and every member of the cabinet and member of the party was warned that this is serious legislation, Mr. Speaker, very serious. And truth be told, each one of us, after discussion, we agreed that it was serious legislation. And we agreed to support it because our intention is to follow the law and to improve the level of governance in the country. Our intention is for a child to want to say that I want to be a politician. And I want to say that all these politicians are, you know what they say about some politicians. It's a law that says that all politicians are not the same. That we are leading by example, Mr. Speaker. We are coming to this honorable house and define what is corrupt conduct in clear terms that everyone can read it. What we feel is corrupt conduct. This is what this government is all about. And, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that we know that when we leave government, we will have St. Lucia will be a better place than when we took it over, Mr. Speaker. And that is our intention, to make St. Lucia a better place, Mr. Speaker. Not fall in the same malaise, in the same lies and misinformation and that we found it in Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I ask honorable members to support this act, and I want to reiterate that it is very serious legislation. It's legislation that speaks to governance. It's legislation that speaks to moral justice. It's legislation that speaks to transparency. It's legislation that speaks to accountability. It's legislation that speaks to us not depriving the people of this country because we want to make ourselves rich. It's legislation that speaks to the delivery of goods and services for an affordable price and not for an inflated price to assist our friends. That's what this legislation is all about. Our politics must change, Mr. Speaker. The way we conduct our politics must change. And when the people of St. Lucia voted for us in July last year, they voted for change. They voted for us to change the way things are done in St. Lucia. And this act is the continuation of that change, Mr. Speaker. I thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm not a lawyer, neither a lawyer with papers or lawyer without papers. I will not profess, Mr. Speaker, to speak about matters of law, nor will I try to confuse the purpose of this bill with matters of semantics, Mr. Speaker. In the same way, Mr. Speaker, according to me, I'm not an engineer. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say a few simple things. First of all, Mr. Speaker, I want to state clearly the intention of this bill, Mr. Speaker, and to try to clarify how the leader of the opposition is attempting to say that this bill will usurp the powers of the Director of Public Prosecutions, Mr. Speaker, in his own mind. Clause 3, Mr. Speaker, the bill of the Act clearly states the Act does not affect the authority of the Director of Public Prosecutions under Section 73 of the Constitution of St. Lucia or other enactments. B, the Attorney General to pursue a civil claim or to discontinue or withdraw a civil claim on behalf of the government. C, the Parliamentary Commissioner under Section 112 of the Constitution of St. Lucia, Cap 101. D, the Integrity Commission under Section 119 of the Constitution of St. Lucia. And E, the Financial Intelligence Authority under the Money Laundering Prevention Act. It clearly states, Mr. Speaker, that the Act does not affect the authority of these people. Clearly, Mr. Speaker, it is clear and pellucid that it doesn't affect this bill, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition, very convenient at this time. Mr. Speaker, when you listen to the leader of the opposition, you'll feel he's the most pious and the most gentle individual who, when he was in government, he was so nice to everybody. And when he was in government, he was great and he didn't do anybody any harm. And the people were just so ungrateful for him, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition speaks that of the Jamaica Act, the Governor General. And he seems to give the impression that he respected the Governor General. Mr. Speaker, I know it's not customary to use the Governor General in this House, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, do you know this Prime Minister, former Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, and the stories, and I'm sure it will be written in the memoirs of the Governor General, how he treated the last Governor General because he perceived of her political, because she was appointed by us, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when the leader of the opposition appointed a new Governor General, he did not have the courtesy to inform the leader of the opposition that he was appointing a new Governor General and the existing Governor General was leaving office. And he speaks about as if the Governor General is sacrilegious, and he treated the Governor General with such great respect, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, he did not even, our position was clear on the then Governor General. We said because of his position, we would not attend any official functions under his auspices. But we respected him. We respected the office of Governor General, Mr. Speaker. So when the leader of the opposition comes and pretends that he was so nice, and because the Jamaica Act under a particular section speaks to the Governor General being involved, that makes the act so different and transparent than our act. This is, as a friend of mine would say, hypocrisy. So, Mr. Speaker, another point, Mr. Speaker, that the leader of the opposition again, Mr. Speaker, seeking to score 3 points speaks about the appointment of the special prosecutor. Under section, what section come in? 4.
Our Act, section 4.
In our Act, Mr. Speaker, under section 4, Mr. Speaker, listen to who appoints the special prosecutor: the Judicial and Legal Services Commission. That is the same commission that appoints judges, the same commission that appoints the Director of Public Prosecutions, the same commission that appoints people in the legal fraternity. But he comes here and he wants to give the impression that that is something we're doing very odd because one act. Mr. Speaker, let me tell you the difference between the Jamaica situation and our situation. St. Lucia's judicial system is an OECS, Mr. Speaker. It's an OECS situation. We have one one Chief Justice for the entire OECS. We have judges for the entire OECS. So that is different. So our Judicial and Legal Services Commission, that is the one that appoints people into the legal fraternity. Exactly, and in Jamaica they stand alone, Mr. Speaker. In Jamaica it stands alone. So there is no comparison. So to say that because the special prosecutor is appointed by this services commission, there is something wrong, and compared to Jamaica is again flashing mirrors. Just trying to mix up the whole thing, Mr. Speaker, because he knows very well that what he's saying is not accurate, Mr. Speaker. There's a basic difference. Then the leader of the opposition tries to gain political sympathy by saying he wants to protect public servants. Mr. Speaker, this leader of the opposition wants to talk about protecting public servants. Ask the Governor General how she was treated. Ask Tracy Polius how she was treated. Ask the Cabinet Secretary, Daryl Montrop. Daryl Montrop was the only Cabinet Secretary that was fired by any government. In the history of St. Lucia, there is no Cabinet Secretary that was treated how the leader of the opposition treated Daryl Montrop. And today, that case is in court, and the taxpayers are the ones who have to pay the legal fees involved, Mr. Speaker. And the leader of the opposition speaks about public servants. As permanent secretaries, how the leader of the opposition treated him when he was in government. As members who were in the embassies, the people who represented us overseas. Up to now, we have claims against how the leader of the opposition treated these people when he came into government, Mr. Speaker. Look at our record. Look at our record of treating public servants. In fact, some of the critics, I think the member of Kashi South said so, some of the critics of our administration, they say we've taken too long to change. But I tell my colleagues, we must exercise temperance, we must exercise maturity, because one day you are in government and the next day you can be out of government. That is the basic mantra on which we run this country. So we try to administer this country so that we can live in it when we are in opposition, if we ever get there, Mr. Speaker. So when the member speaks to public servants, you'd believe he's a darling of public servants. That's the same member who said to public servants, that's not your business. The same member. Ask the member how he treated people in the police service, in the police force. Okay. Look at how he treated them. And you talk about public servants? The history. And he believes that the people of St. Lucia are going to forget. Mr. Speaker, a fundamental difference in our acts, and which the leader of the opposition knows. He knows very well, Mr. Speaker. It speaks to how a complaint can be made. And it says anybody. So it's not political. He gives the impression it's a political witch hunt. It says anybody can bring a complaint against a public official. Anybody, Mr. Speaker. But it also says that the complaint must not be frivolous, And the special prosecutor has a right to say this complaint is frivolous, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, again, trying to make a point that doesn't exist, Mr. Speaker. There's a fundamental principle, and I'm no lawyer, that says there's a presumption of innocence, and a man is considered innocent unless proven guilty. So how can the leader of the opposition out of the blue say that this special prosecutor, it makes you judge, jury, and executioner? The logic doesn't make sense. How can a special prosecutor be judge, jury, and executor? And how can it not possible, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, again, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm down to talk. I want, under advisement from the Attorney General, to quote from a case. And I know you're very familiar with that case, Mr. Speaker. I know, Mr. Speaker, because your knowledge of the law is how you describe it? It's extensive. Thank you very much. So I know you'll tell me if I'm wrong, Mr. Speaker. And I'm quoting from, I'm not a lawyer, so, and I'm quoting from the case, Commissioner of Police and other appellants versus Tedroy C.O. Benjamin, respondent from the Court of Appeal of Antigua and Barbuda. The leader of the opposition said, only the director of public prosecution can bring a case against somebody. That's what he said. Listen to what the learned judge said. That's all right, listen. The learned judge, thank you. Listen to what the learned judge said, Mr. Speaker. The learned judge said, on 1st January 2013, the director issued a publication entitled Guide for Prosecutors, Antigua and Barbuda. It was stated in paragraph 5.3 that it will be recognized that the DPP remains solely responsible for the taking of all prosecutorial decisions, and the police remain solely responsible for the conduct of investigations. It says, the statement may be said broadly to reflect the decision of the majority in the Court of Appeal, and the board wonders whether, when he made it, the director had not been apprised of the pending appeal to it. At all events, the statement does not, in the opinion of the board, accurately reflect the law. The board's conclusion does not disable it from stressing the importance of a good, mutually respectful working relationship between the police and the director. Unresolved conflict between them of the sort exemplified in this appeal damages public confidence in the administration of justice. The director can generally be expected to have a wider perception than the police of whether, for example, a proposed prosecution is in the public interest. The director cannot instruct, but he can request.
Mr. Prime Minister, just for the neatness of that, you did say this was a Court of Appeal decision. That is, in fact, a Privy Council decision.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. That's why I appeal to your knowledge of the law. That was a Privy Council decision, the highest court on the land at that time, Mr. Speaker, although we intend to go to the Caribbean Court of Justice. So, Mr. Speaker, but again, the leader of the opposition playing to the gallery, playing to what he thinks is emotion, and comes and misleads the House again. Mr. Speaker, I spoke earlier about the presumption of innocence, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, again, the leader of the opposition gives the impression that once a special prosecutor gets a case, the person will automatically go to jail. In fact, there are some cases that the person should. But, Mr. Speaker, again, there is a judge. And the bill, the act says that the case will go to a judge where there's a presumption of innocence, Mr. Speaker, and the judge and the jury will come to a decision. So what is he saying? What is the point? What is the point? Mr. Speaker, the authority of the Director of Public Prosecution remains. The authority of everyone else involved, in in the process, the authority of these people remain, Mr. Speaker, the Attorney General, the Parliamentary Commissioner, the Interior Commission, the Intelligence Authority. But, Mr. Speaker, the public of St. Lucia are asking, they are saying that they are tired of these allegations, and the government of St. Lucia wants these allegations to be cleared up. So all we are saying is that if the public believes that there is something that needs to be cleared up, give it to the hands of the special prosecutor. And the special prosecutor is stipulated in the bill, must have 10 years experience. A judge needs 7.
The DPP needs 7.
The DPP needs 7, Mr. Speaker. The DPP needs 7 years to be a DPP. But the special prosecutor in our decision, out of the abundance of caution, the special prosecutor needs 10 years experience as a lawyer before he can be considered as a special prosecutor. So all the guidelines are here and all the safeguards are here, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, something transpired here today that is very sad. You see, Mr. Speaker, in this politics, and I've been there for quite a while, Mr. Speaker, the people of Cassius East have allowed me to represent them for 25 years, and I thank them for that. I thank them deeply and immensely for that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, so you cannot say that I know a little bit about politics, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, if you have so much evidence that is pellucidly clear about a member of this house, you are the Prime Minister, you take it to everybody you can, and no one can say what you're saying is right. Something is wrong with you. Right or wrong? Simple logic. None of us, we ever came here and pinpoint on somebody and say all kinds of things about him or her and do nothing about it. But you took action. You went to court, you went to the customs, you say you went to the audit department, you went to everybody you could. Why was something not done? Why? Something doesn't make sense here, Mr. Speaker. Something doesn't make sense here. So, Mr. Speaker, I would hate to believe that this vindictiveness is so ingrained in the leader of the opposition that even after his loss, he hasn't admitted and say, mea culpa, mea culpa, mea culpa. It's sad, Mr. Speaker. It's sad. And he comes with these false faces and these girls laughs, giving the impression that he has no anger, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the venom that the leader of the opposition treats the government, Mr. Speaker, is clear. So, Mr. Speaker, we are saying that we want to have a transparent government. We want to have a government where the people have a say in the runnings of the country, and the people can determine if something has to be investigated or not. But out of the abundance of caution, we want the person who is investigating it to be above board, to be experienced, and to be able to cast a proper judgment, Mr. Speaker. There is nothing to hide in this bill. This bill affects us just like them. It affects all politicians. And in cabinet, we said to the members of the cabinet, Mr. Speaker, that this bill is a serious bill. That is why we circulated this bill. How many weeks? 3 weeks?
Yeah, 3 weeks or more.
More than 3 weeks, Mr. Speaker. This bill was in the public domain for the public to read, and for the public to understand what we were facing. We did not come in and pass this bill through all the stages. we allowed this bill to be circulated in the community, in the country, throughout the world for people to see, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, it is because we want to raise the level of governance in this country. We want to give St. Lucians something to be proud of. When I never want St. Lucians to have the perception that a government is so corrupt, that anything that the government does, it is questioned, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are certain things that we have to question. And you can talk about misjudgment. Why would a government come into office and find a PPP arrangement for an airport that is all but signed and abandon that arrangement when the entire financial world says to you that is the way to go? Even now after COVID, it says to you, you abandon it. And the first thing you do is you abandon it. You ask to, okay, you want to abandon it? Let us supervise it for you. You said to the IFC, no. And you proceed and give a direct award for the largest infrastructural project in St. Lucia's history. You give a direct award, and as soon as you start, Mr. Speaker, you give directions to move it from the point where it's supposed to be, and then the first act after that, you have cost overruns over $23 million. US. The first act.
55.
From the first, I'm not accusing anyone of everything, but something is wrong there. Something is wrong, Mr. Speaker. And then you instruct somebody to give the award to a firm. You instruct, Mr. Speaker. Secondly, why would a government come into office and find the Grosile Castries Highway signed and funded by the Kuwaiti Fund for International Development? Signed and funded, Mr. Speaker. The only reason why these roads did not start, because the then Minister of Finance thought that the tender documents for the secondary roads, there was too much of a wide difference between the largest tender and the smallest tender. Why would the government abandon it? Decline alone. I was called at home by somebody from Kuwait because they thought in St. Lucia we had a system of handover, and when there was gentlemanly conduct between the government and the other government, they called and they said to me, "What are you doing?" I said, "Doing what?" Because at that time they were looking to do whatever they could do with me because I'd lost elections. He said to me, "Why are you all abandoning that? What are you all doing that?" He said to me, let me say something for you. He said that the government of St. Lucia had cancelled the loan. They cancelled a loan that was ready to start the construction of the secondary roads in the Grosile Highway. Look at what you have in Grosile today, Mr. Speaker. And then, a year before election, you want to build a little section of it for $15 million. A year before election. But you cancel the loan, Mr. Speaker. Why? I'm not accusing anybody of anything. Why would a government come into office and find OPIC had approved a loan to improve the Millennium Highway? Approved to improve the Millennium Highway, Mr. Speaker. You abandon it, you stop it, you cancel it again. And you take money from a fund that this government had earmarked to build the Chemin Royal. Why? Why would a government come into office and find the development of a hotel, the Range Hotel, ready to go? That hotel has been built in Dominica and St. Kitts. The same developer has built 2 hotels in Dominica and St. Kitts. You've come into government. We come and we beg you, do not do that. Leave it as it is. We need the hotel. You abandon it and you have to pay money. And up to now, the story of how much money you've paid has not been told. But we know. But you will not tell me when to do it. I'm the Prime Minister now, not you. So I will say, you will not tell me when. I will say when to do it. I will say anything. But we asked you. Why didn't you say? You asked you. We were there. You said. You never said how much.
That's not true.
You never said how much.
You never said how much.
That's why I tell you, you must speak the truth. When?
Speak the truth.
You're going to become the privilege commissioner again, you know.
You never
I
did.
will
You
not.
never did.
I will not.
You never did.
I will not take you to the privilege commission. You did twice already. I take you there again because you see, I want you to be. I want you to be here all the time. I don't want you to. I don't want to suspend you. I like you. I want you to be here because the more you stay here, the better for me. So I want you here. I want you here.
If you are so great, you wouldn't be there.
So, Mr. Speaker, you abandon it. You abandon the Range Hotel. You abandon it, Mr. Speaker. You understand? Because up to today, why would you abandon a development of a hotel like that, of that nature? We begged you. So you can't say we were against development. We begged you, Mr. Speaker. Why will you come into office and find the Soufre Square near completion? You stop it. You leave it there for about a year. And you just so. I mean, something must be wrong, Mr. Speaker. Something must be wrong. And I am not accusing anybody of anything. I'm saying something must be wrong, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, this bill also speaks to how government funds are used, misbehavior in public office. Because we are told, Mr. Speaker, listen to that. The Electoral and Boundaries Commission makes a ruling on the boundary delineation in this country. All the members of the commission, and I ask my colleagues to guide me as I go. All the members of there are 5 members of the commission. 2 government, 2 opposition, and the speaker. Right, Mr. Speaker? 5 members of the commission. Every member, 5 or 4? 5. Every member signs on the bottom line that they agree the delineation of the constituencies. Because it's agreed that one constituency cannot be grossly, cannot be as large as it is, and Dennery as small as it is. So it's agreed, and everybody agrees that the constituencies need to be changed. They sign upon it. They sign. A member of the government, is the government or the opposition? At the time, the opposition.
It was the government.
A member of the government objects, or the opposition at the time objects, and says because it will make him lose his seat, but he lose anyhow. Yeah. Because it will make him lose his seat, he objects, Mr. Speaker. The matter goes to court. The member loses. He loses both counts. He loses the election and he loses the case. And the government is called upon to
Prime Minister, just a point of correction there. The case was actually never heard, which is the point of the consent order. Of the consent. It was never heard. But yes, the question of the removal of Anthony Astafan did cause an order of cost against the claimant to be paid to the commission. But the case was not determined.
Thank you. Well said, Miss. Well said. Well said. You get no cover, Chief. You have no cover there. You have no cover. The point I want to make is that because of that action, the government of St. Lucia may be called upon to pay nearly $1 million worth in costs. That is the point. That's the point. That's the point. So all around, you see, I am no lawyer. I'm not going around anything. I talk about pure and brutal facts. Because of that action, the government of St. Lucia may be called upon to pay over nearly $1 million in costs from the taxpayers of this country, and you talk about VAT. You were there. You know, I'm glad he talked linguist. I'm glad. Let's talk about linguists. You know, you always open the door, you know. He opens doors and he can't close it. That's his problem. He was in government for 5 years. He had all the fights in front of him. You go and find what linguists said. You were in government, you're prime minister, you're big and mighty, you're a master. You used to laugh at people. Go in there, you in government. You had all the powers to go to the states and whatever you could do. You could talk about fellas' visa, all kind of thing. Why didn't you find out when you were in government about linguists? Don't pretend you were in government. You were in government. You had 5
years, more than 5.
You had more than 5 to talk about linguists. Why didn't you find out about linguists? Why couldn't you do it? So don't come and ask me about linguists. I will tell you what I want to tell you when I want to tell you in the interest of transparency. But don't come and ask me about linguists. It's these things that you say, that they say, that fools people. You were in government. You had you had everybody. You put everybody around you. You had everything to do. Why didn't you do what you're supposed to do? Find that link and say, come here and say to this honorable house, this is what linguist said. I challenge you here to continue the linguist investigation. I challenge you, continue it. But I can assure you that we are going to be fair and transparent. I don't want to unfair anybody. Again, some of our supporters believe that we are too slow, that I'm afraid, that I'm a coward. The same thing they said about me. The same thing you thought, that's why I'm here. But it's not a matter of being afraid or being a coward. It's a matter of being principled, it's a matter of being disciplined, and it's a matter of giving each man a chance to live in his own reality. And the integrity of the office of Prime Minister, which I refuse to bring into any disrepute. So I will never initiate any investigation against anybody, not me, unless I'm advised and unless there is proof. And that is why you make the point about 1 year. As a second time I've heard you say that. 1 year, you're left for 1 year. 1 year, Mr. Speaker, means that in that 1 year, we are running the affairs of the country, and in that 1 year, or in the 2 years, or in I answer you, because you know, listen to me, you bring this country, you brought this country with the largest deficit in St. Lucia's history.
Do it from there. Tourism.
Today,
Fantastic job.
Today,
one hotel, you have built one hotel. Amazing job for sure. Look at the arrivals. Yeah. You are a tourism guru, you have built one hotel yet. Me? I am a learner. I'm a learner. You the guru. You lose. I'm a learner. And a learner doing better than you.
Mr. Speaker, not even, I mean it's very sad, eh? Very sad. Not even figures the leader of the opposition wants to agree with you. I mean, it's a sad situation. I've come here and I've said, when things happen, I've said yes. Not even figures. Today there were 1,470 visitors in St. Lucia. Tuesday, 1,470 people came to St. Lucia. Today, on Sunday, there were 1,700 people came to St. Lucia. I mean, you must give Jack when his jacket. I mean, how can you could not find the hotels? You see, you want to go. You see, you want me to give him a history in tourism now.
Yeah, exactly.
You want me to get a history in tourism?
What you did? What hotels? Nothing. What you doing? Nothing. Nothing. You're a snake oil salesman. That's what you are. You snake oil salesman. Just talk. That's why you are where you are. You could never reach there. Never. You even fake a degree at university. You know, even a degree you fake probably. Want to see that outside? UDC, University for Dumb Children. University of the Chef.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know what. Mr. Speaker, you know, I don't understand what's the thing, Mr. Speaker. Today, I said there were 1,700. He's denying that. On Sunday, there were 1,800. He denying that too. Every hotel in St. Lucia, there is full. He denying that too. We had a big Emancipation Day celebration when he said colonialism has a conscience. He denying that too. He's denying the fact that he spent $800,000 to build a tent that's still in Rodney Bay. He denying that too. He's denying all these things, you know. He's denying the fact he hasn't built one hotel in St. Lucia for next, whether he was the Minister of Tourism or Minister, or Prime Minister. He's denying that too. Oh my God. You denying everything, Chief? And you calling people liar? You denying the fact that you told the Americans that you're going to have $1.5 billion of investment in the next year? You denying that too? You denying the fact that you said you're going to be 23 islands next year? You denying that too? You denying the fact that you said the Port of the Caribbean will have 800 people working by the year 2019? You denying that too? I mean, come on. You denying the fact that in every budget speech you said you'd build 7 hotels? You denying that too? You denying the fact that you said there were 800 deportees from England in your first year? You denying that too? Let's finish that. You denying that too? You denying the fact that you said you signed the paper for the price of gas to go down immediately? You denying that too? You denying the fact that you said you'd agreed with France to send bananas to France on the first week? You denying that too? I mean, this gentleman is something else, one.
Which hotel was that? What in the hotel with you? £1,000? That's serious hotel. What was there? The wife wasn't there.
And Steve talk here, sir. Steve talk here, sir. The library ever open yet?
The library is missing pages because you're sleeping.
Yes, sleep. The library open yet.
Don't wake him up.
So, Mr. Speaker.
He have his own stand, you know that.
So, Mr. Speaker. Deny, Mr. Speaker. You deny the fact that St. Jude Hospital, there was just, and I believe in transparency. The member for Central Castries, he only gave 1 page in the document. But I made available to the members the entire document that said, after he'd spent $89 million on the box, there was another $70 million only for the bottom floor, you know. I mean, you think people are listening to that? Only for the bottom floor. It's not nothing I say, Chief. Not nothing I say, Chief. I nearly call you comrade. It's nothing I say. I'll never do that. I'll never do that. It's not nothing I say, It's in the document. Can I see the document? Like the one I gave you. Can I see it? Sergeant of Arms, take the document for me, please. I'll get back to you. You can trust me. I'll get back to you. Because Mr. Speaker, the leader of the opposition wants to open the door. Thank you very much, sir. 15th July 2021.
11 days before election.
The Department of Economic Development is in receipt of a draft finance agreement for the St. Jude Hospital reconstruction project from, I don't want to mention the company's name. I know my style. I don't want to do it. Because, as the member of Kashi South, you see anybody that bluffed the government, I vetted them, Because the government, if a prime minister can allow a businessman to bluff him and take a bribe, it's his fault. So I don't mention nobody's name. I don't mention people's names. We will be grateful if you'd review and provide feedback on same at the earliest. Bill finance agreement between the government of St. Lucia and the company for the construction and finance of the St. Jude Hospital in O'Shea. Listen, Mr. Speaker, all the terms are there, works, blah, blah, blah. And you see, Mr. Speaker, and tell people the hospital will finish in 6 months. We'll have a brand new hospital in 6 months. And I heard somebody who is most famous for losing elections make the echo, yeah, yes, you have a new hospital in 6 months. 6 months. Listen to the second schedule. The second schedule, the works. The works involve the construction of post-structural frame elements, which entails architectural, mechanical, electrical and plumbing, as well as civil and site works. These elements will be incorporated into the finished frame in order to bring the structure of St. Jude into use. See description of the first schedule. Work schedule, works contract. The works are captured in 2 works contracts awarded to the company. Architectural works and transition costs to bring the ground floor into use. The ground floor. And you tell people, if you have a brand new house in 6 months. The ground floor. The 4th schedule. The client agrees to enter into a payment plan and therefore agree to settle the financial obligations of the company over a period of 1 year. A payment plan over a period of 1 year from the date the works are completed, Mr. Speaker. And listen to it. Architectural works. What's the meaning of that? 22,883,687.58. Architectural works. Ground floor works. 44,143,951.21 cents. Subtotal works. 56,977,651.79 cents. VAT 7.1 million 102,204. Total 64 million and 99,843. Finance costs, interest, Mr. Speaker, and remember shows that is a banker, a short-term financing agreement. The interest cost is $6,653,811. The grand total $70,773,864 for the ground floor of a hospital. The ground floor alone. Now, listen to the payments. And you know, Mr. Speaker, this is, Mr. Speaker, you know, Mr. Speaker, you know, this job, Mr. Speaker, this job is a very lonely job. Because when I go home at nights and I think about the tasks ahead for this country, how the people in my constituency, they come to me to want to send their children to school. They want, the roads are bad. And I think of that waste, Mr. Speaker. It really hurts my heart, Mr. Speaker. The loneliness engulfs me. Because I also know that there are men and women who feel, the men and women we feel, and we try to comfort each other and say, better days are coming, Mr. Speaker. Listen to that. Listen to that. Mr. Speaker, you find a hospital structure. You commission an inquiry into the hospital structure. You pay $1 million for it. Again, I'm not against a person who paid $1 million. Nothing. You see, Mr. Speaker, I don't get involved in these kind of things. I get involved in the policy makers, not the fellows who make the money. The decision, thank you very much. The decision maker, you have an audit, you pay $1 million for it, 985,000 to be exact. You want exact figures. The audit tells you that there are issues in the hospital, but it can be used for the purpose of a hospital. You have, oh my God. Mr. Speaker, you have millions of dollars of material on the site. Last month, we did an inventory on the stuff on the site, and it will break your heart, Mr. Speaker. It will break your heart, because you know, we talk about St. Jude's. It will break your heart to tell you the volume of material that was on the site in St. Jude, and they allowed it to rotten. Medical equipment.
Member of Castries, you have 15 minutes left.
Mr. Speaker, can I ask, I want some time, because they open the door, I have to go in.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to invoke Standing Orders 4210 to allow the Honorable Prime Minister an extra half hour to complete his presentation.
Honorable members, the question is that Standing Order 4210 be invoked to allow the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance an additional 30 minutes in which to complete his rebuttal. And now put the question, as many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many as of a contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it. Ayes have it. Leave is granted. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, so I left when you were commissioning the report. You accuse everybody. You say that some of us make bubble, we take material to build our house and things so. You get into government. You take the police and you go and search places to collect material. Then you find most of the material to complete the hospital, most of it, and I'm going to bring the inventory list for this honorable, because as the leader of government business says, the member of Microsoft, we're going to have a debate on St. Jude.
That's right.
We're going to have a debate on St. Jude. Because the propaganda that is spread about hospital in 6 months, we must clarify, Mr. Speaker, there is an inventory that shows material that could be used was allowed to waste and rotten. Then you go and you destroy 2 buildings. What did he didn't do it? No, I get a new copy. I've ended. If it's copy you want, chief, copies you have to see there coming.
You want to stick back proper.
You destroyed 2 buildings. Up to today, you cannot tell the people of St. Lucia why you destroyed these 2 buildings. You put a bulldozer in it. The same way you put a bulldozer in the prison and you pay twice for it. You like this bulldozer thing. The same way you put a bulldozer in the bridge in Soufre and you lose election for it. The same way you propose to put a bulldozer in this building and mash it up. You like bulldozers.
Richard, order.
You refuse to use the material that was there to complete the hospital. The audit tells you you can complete the hospital even though there are some problems. You send somebody to there, you send somebody in there, you send your surrogates in there, one of them says, open your hand, then you cut past the corridor. So on that basis, you stop. Then you leave it for 3 years. Goodness gracious, man. You allow the building to rotten. You leave it closed for 3 years. You spend $89 million on a block. And you have liabilities of $34 million that I have to pay.
In addition to the
89 years.
And plus
another 70 for the ground floor alone.
Just the ground.
That is the reality of St. Jude's, of the block. Plus the fact that you spent we spent $90 million on the old buildings. And look at how you paid it back. And listen to the payment will be carried over the period of 1 year in the following manner. 1 year. You mean to tell me this Minister of Finance, say you have a degree in economics, finance and everything else, will look for any way where you pay back a loan in 1 year? $70 million in 1 year? I mean, all the advisors, all the accountants and things that are advising you. 70, I'm sure. I have my money down on that. No banker. If you bring that for banker, the banker will tell you it's too good to be true. Leave his office. The banker will say it's too good to be true. Leave his office. This is not bridging finance, you know. It's not a bridging finance that say, you say to yourself, listen to me, I'm getting a loan, so give me some money and I'll give you back the money as I can. You have no idea where you're getting it from. Listen to how you're getting it. The payment will be carried over the period of 1 year in the following manner. Within 3 months of signing this agreement, the client will pay EC $26 million in Eastern Caribbean currency, the source being a loan from the Republic of China in Taiwan, identified as Loan Agreement 602184007. Now let me tell you something. Mr. Speaker. You see that same loan agreement? It was earmarked to do something else. The second quarter payment, and I think I have the information. If they doubt me, I have the information. I have it. The second quarter payment will be carried out by the client, paying to the company EC $10,752,000, the source being the government of St. Lucia. So for some way, you're going to get $10 million in serious cash flow problems. When you run a deficit in your current account of over 7%, you'll find $10 million to pay the phone. Yes. The third payment will be carried out by the client, paying the company EC $18,710,000, the source being the government of St. Lucia. The fourth quarter payment will be carried out by the client, paying to the company EC $14,478,994.80, the source being from the government of St. Lucia. Listen to the clause, and you must take your mind to the airport. Remember, the airport had a finder's fee. Remember that? Because when the airport was supposed to be financed, there was a finder's fee until the bank said, no, I give you the money. There's a finder's fee. Listen to the thing now. In the case of late payment of any invoice submitted by the company, the client will pay interest of 1% per day.
What?
Because the client knows he's going to be late. 1% per day to the company on the amount overdue. 1% per day. Now, Robert Lewis was a mathematician. What's 1% of $69 million? What's it? 1%? $6,900. $69,000. Yeah. $69,000 a day. Yeah. $69,000 a day. A day. That's the interest you're going to pay.
So 10 days is 690.
No, 690,000, 10 days.
That's no money, man. That's
10 days. And that is the agreement. Mr. Speaker, I hope the public of St. Lucia, I hope we're hearing that, because forget about your political bias. Forget about if you think Philip J. Pierre is this and that. Forget about that. 1% per day on the late payment, Mr. Speaker. So if you're on the first late loan payment, you pay $69,000. 10 days, $690,000. After you have an interest rate of $6 million per year. Goodness gracious.
And your finance cost of that.
That is money that is protecting every 10%, that's 6.9.
Oh yeah, you're right. So, Mr. Speaker, I am saying that to you, Mr. Speaker, and this is not something that I say, you know. This is a document which I have made a document of the House, and which will come back to this House when we have the debate on St. Jude. Because we have nothing to hide on St. Jude. Because if the United Workers' Party was smart, they would say, let sleepy dogs lie low. But no, it's bravado. Let's demonstrate. Let's demonstrate. Because you know the facts, Mr. Speaker. Then the airport is another story. The airport is even bigger money. The airport is even bigger money. Because there was a plan, Mr. Speaker, so that's the St. Jude story. There was a plan for the airport for 760 piles. By an instruction, it turned to 3,000. We'll discuss all of it here, Mr. Speaker. And there is, in the airport had an elevated departure lounge. So you're driving up to get to the thing. The study said, which airport in the world you have to drive up to go? Bogash. I mean, it's not me I say it, you know. Don't look at me as you strange. Don't try that. Don't try that pretensive. You're too pretensive. You drive to go in? You drive to go to Miami Airport? You drive to go upstairs? Do you drive, when you drive your car to Miami Airport, do you drive upstairs? Which airport? Where? Only the one you go to. You drive, do you drive? That's like that already. Do you drive to go upstairs in the airport? When they drop you in Miami, you drive upstairs? Where?
Upstairs is departure, and downstairs is arrival.
You drive? You don't drive? You drive? So how do you get rid of your luggage?
You take it out of the car.
But you park on the side and you make it empty on the side. That's what happens in Minneapolis. No, you have to drive up. You see, your problem is you're wrong and strong. You see, you fool yourself so much. That's why you fool yourself to where you are, you know. You fool yourself so much. That's why you tell all your colleagues that you win already. I win already, man. Pierre got an election. Win already. That's what you told your colleagues.
That's true.
That's what you told them. That's what he told them. He said, I win already, you know. This fellas can win. Pierre is a joker. That's what he told your colleagues. But this Pierre beat you 15-2.
Jeremiah says 16.
So, Mr. Speaker, I thought, Mr. Speaker,
No, you know he's welcome. You know he's welcome.
Mr. Speaker, you want your document? Give the honorable his document first. Honorable Badfield. So, Mr. Speaker, I thought, Mr. Speaker, I would make these issues bring issue attention to the House, Mr. Speaker, because really what we want to do is not to accuse anybody, but we're asking questions, and these questions are there to be asked. Why would somebody do that? Exactly. Why would somebody do that, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, do you know, if this leader of the opposition had continued the project that we started, you know we would never be here?
That's true. That's true.
We would never be here. Look at how St. Lucia would have been if he wasn't leader of the UWP. We'd have a new airport. We'd have the Castries Grosedale Highway. We would have a new St. Jude Hospital. We would have a new Millennium Highway. We would have the Range Hotel. We would have a new wind farming. We'd have a wind farming dennery, renewable energy. We'd have all that. How you expect us to win election? But you know, Mr. Speaker, there is something that says, "He whom the gods want to destroy is first make of mad." Because I cannot understand, and I've asked everybody, including some of his colleagues, why did this guy do that? I mean, I've never understood why. Why would this guy, why would a prime minister find these projects in the making? I forget the police headquarters that he mashed up. That was funded already. I'm saying to myself, why did this guy do that? Why would the honorable member, thank you, do that, Mr. Speaker? Find a country where the deficit on current account was near prudential levels, 3%. And the debt to GDP ratio, before it was rebased, was at 70%, rebasing took it to 61%. That's what he found. That's what he found. And you take all that and you throw it down the drain to live on a dream. You did not know that it takes years when you dismantle a project to put it back up. You didn't know that. You didn't know that investors lose confidence in you when you find something going and you just break it up. Mr. Speaker, so we need to get answers to these questions, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the members for supporting this bill. I want to tell you, Mr. Speaker, that what we want to do is to raise the level of governance in St. Lucia. And the leader of the opposition always opens the door to make me go in. He always does that. He doesn't learn from his mistakes, Mr. Speaker. And that is why the members of his party summons him to meetings and they don't attend. That is why, Mr. Speaker, because he doesn't listen. He doesn't listen. He doesn't take counsel except from people who he believes can give him counsel, Mr. Speaker. Because we want him, you know. Today I heard him trying to say about, oh, the member for Vieux Salve talk about constitution. You know, one of them sat there and he said to the member of Vieux Salve who was sitting there, he said to him, if I have a case, he said, if I have a case for a foul cage, I won't give it to you. He said to the member of Kashisov, you can't run the cricket ball there, you want to run a country? He sat there and he did not say to the member, do not, sometimes we say to our people, our ministers, don't say that. He never said to the member not to say that. But now he's trying to play, he's so pious and nice. Oh, the member of Vieux Salve is a constitutional lawyer. Yes, thank you. They simply tell you come from a cave in Vieux North. Remember that? Yeah. Yeah, that's what they told him. They told him he come from a cave in Vieux North. The leader, none of my men and women that can say that. I'll call him up, pull him up right away. He said to him, you said to the member of Vieux North, you come from a cage in Vieux North. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to say to the public of St. Lucia that this bill, this act is for them. It's a promise that we made to them to bring the level of governance to this country to a higher level. It's an act that believes that being in government is to serve and not in government to make money. It's an act that believes that you must respect the people of the country, you must respect the finances of the country. And it's an act that we hope will raise the bar and raise the level of governance, transparency, and accountability in this country. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.